Well, we've been on a little bit of a journey over these weeks, thinking about grandparenting and thinking about a sailing theme and drawing some analogies. And tonight, this is going to be a hodgepodge of ideas centered around a common theme. And that theme is fun. We're going to talk about fun, just having fun. Now, you got the handout for tonight. That is a printout of an Excel spreadsheet file that was put together by Ray Clifford years ago. I've added a few things to it over the years. I keep it on the computer at home, and I use it when I need it. I'll mention that a little bit later. We're going to talk about fun tonight. I want to begin by, you don't have any of the notes I have here, and I'm sorry about that. But at least you have those notes, and that's just a lot of ideas that will help you. I'm going to start with the scuttlebutt session. Now, as a reminder, what scuttlebutt is. When a ship was scuttled or abandoned, the sailors would sink the ship by drilling holes in the hull below the waterline. And the drilling of the holes is what the word scuttle means. Drilling of the holes in the hull. Now, in the days of sailing, the golden age of sail, it was common for a ship to take barrels of water aboard so the sailors would have fresh water to drink. And think of these barrels or casks, or they were called butts, B-U-T-T-S. Think of the old wooden whiskey barrel that you used to use, that people used to use. All right. Am I getting too close home? And that's what they would have on the ship. And so that was called a butt, and it was on the ship holding fresh water, and they would scuttle the barrel by drilling a hole in the side, and they'd cork it. And then when sailors needed a drink, they would go to the water barrel and they would get the fresh water to drink, and they'd stand around the barrel and they would talk, and that's where gossip happened and where rumors got spread, and it was just conversation around this barrel, and that's what scuttlebutt is. It's the conversation and the rumoring and just the stuff that happens there. So I'm using the term scuttlebutt to refer to a family gathering, not around a barrel, but around the table. Around the table in the evening where a conversation happens. They get together and they have family discussions and family devotions, and they have conversations. So they're just sharing as a family. Now here's something that I would like to share with my grandkids. I'd like them to think of this. Does God have a sense of humor? That was a pretty sure answer over there. Does God laugh? Where in the Bible does God laugh? Psalm 2, verse 4. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. Now that is a kind of a mocking laughter that God does. But so the question now is, does God laugh joyfully? Now we know He laughs derisively, but does He laugh joyfully? Give some reasons why you think God may laugh joyously. And talk to your grandkids about that. Observe the animal kingdom is one thing I'd want to do. Look at the animals that God created. Look at what some of them look like. I should have brought a picture of one of those monkeys that has a huge nose. You know what I'm talking about? The monkey with the great big nose. Way oversized for the size and shape of its head. But I look at that and I think, God has got to have a sense of humor to create that. The panda bear, watching the way they act. Just think of God creating the animals, and then he tells Adam to name the animals, and I wonder if God just laughed and laughed as He made things, and He gave us certain personalities and characteristics, and they do weird things in their movements, and some goes and sticks its head in a hole in the ground. I mean, why do they do that, God? Put that in them. Can you identify the humor in these Bible stories? Balaam arguing with his donkey. Yeah, I'd like to have seen that. And the donkey won the argument. And Jonah becoming angry over a gourd. And God informing Jonah that if he destroyed Nineveh, what a waste of cattle that would be. Why would he use that as his reason for killing the Ninevites or not killing them? Elijah mockingly telling the prophets of Baal to cry louder. Jacob waking up the morning after his wedding night and he has the wrong wife. Now, I don't know how that could possibly happen, but I believe it happened because it's in the Bible. And I'm thinking, God is telling someone to write it down, and they're writing it down. And I just wonder if God is laughing as he's inspiring the writer to write for us to read for all of eternity. Find verses in the Bible that talk about laughter, and there's quite a few of them. In the Old Testament, primarily, some in the New Testament, talking about joy. And here's some verses that are joy verses. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Nehemiah said, then he said unto them, go your way, eat the fat, drink the sweet, and send portions unto them for whom nothing is prepared. For this day is holy unto our Lord. Neither be ye sorry, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. Habakkuk wrote, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. The psalmist wrote, thou wilt show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. All right? To get in God's presence, to the psalmist, that meant just pure joy. And at thy right hand are pleasures forevermore. So talk about joyfulness and laughter and happiness and the way God made animals. And I mean, open some books and look at some of these animals and just have a good time laughing with your grandkids of the things that God has created and the things that He tells us in the Scripture. And then maybe use your grandkids and take them and go do something special for a family and bring joy into another family's life. The Bible speaks of joy and rejoicing. One of the themes in the Chosen series that is in production that I really appreciate is they show Jesus as a joyful person. When the culture is bleak and Roman oppression is all around them, and you have to see it when you're watching the series. They're just doing what they're doing, and there's the Roman guard in the background and sometimes in the foreground and pushing his way, and you could feel the oppression, but yet Jesus just moves through the culture in the series, and He's filled with joy and laughter and dancing and rejoicing. I like that. Tonight's devotional is titled Fantail Frolicking. Frolic means to have fun. But what's a fantail? Sailing, ships, boats, you know, they have a vocabulary all their own, a huge vocabulary. And I want you to see a picture. I'll throw it up here on the screen here, the picture of a boat. And you'll see some of the names for the parts of a boat. And that is a smidgen. I mean, there's got to be hundreds of parts of the boat with hundreds of unique names. But the front of the boat is the bow, and the back of the boat is the stern. And if you're on the boat facing the bow, your left side is the starboard, your right side's the starboard, and your left side's the port. The hull is the basic shape and body of the boat. Of course, you know what an anchor is. Propeller in the back, and the rudder does the steering in the back. But there's all kind of terms to use to refer to a boat. Now, that picture only has a few. The next picture shows a lot more terms, and the terms somewhat are the same and somewhat are different depending upon the kind of boat that it is. And when you're thinking of the frigates and the boats from the age of sail, the names are quite different than what we have today. Some of the terms are the same. The front of the boat is the bow. The back of the boat is the stern. The fantail. Let's take the next picture. The fantail is the back of the boat, the part of the stern that hangs over. It juts out. the fantail. Now, in this picture, if we enlarged one of the signs, it says Fantail Cafe, and there's tables and chairs, and I see umbrellas that are closed up, but it's a cafe, Fantail Cafe, and that is where on this ship the sailors would gather. Now, a fantail frolic. Years ago, I was planning a graduation banquet for the youth group when I was at Fairfax Baptist Temple, and we were utilizing a nautical theme. And we were going to have a skit in the banquet, and I needed to find a nautical term for fun time to put in the program for the banquet. So I went to one of the men on staff who was a retired Navy officer, Brother Gil Hansen by name, and I told him what I needed. He immediately answered my question. He says, "Oh, you need to call that Fantail Frolic." I said, "What is a Fantail Frolic?" And he said, "That's when sailors gather on the fantail of the ship for recreation and entertainment and just a fun time together." So they called it Fantail Frolic. Well, that was the term that I needed for the brochure for the banquet that year. So here's where I'm going tonight, folks. Here's what I want to pass along to us. Play with your grandkids. Play with your grandkids. Make sure they have a fun time when they are with you. Make sure they laugh when they're with you. Make it so enjoyable that they hate to go. That they want to be with Grandpa and Grandma or Pop and Nana or whatever they call you. What do they call you, by the way? Brother Snyder, what do you call by the grandkids? Your Pop? And your wife is? Mom? My wife is Gigi. How many's called Nana? Nanny? What's that?
Mine calls me Grammy.
Grammy? Yeah, well, there was a... Say it again. Bomb and Bama. Oh. There was a time when my mom had a bunch of little grandkids, and they all called her something different. They were trying to say grandma, and it came out Meemaw and Mockers and Mommy, and it's whatever their little minds and mouths could pronounce. If going to Grandpa and Grandma's house is a fun time, you are increasing your opportunity to influence your grandchildren. You will have more impact. I want you to see a picture here. This is Charles Adams. Oh, well, that's the Fantail Frolic. It's a little bit of entertainment going on in the back of this ship. There's Charles Adams. He was the third son of President John Quincy Adams. Following in the political footsteps of his father, Charles became the U.S. diplomat to Great Britain. He made the following entry in his diary, quote, "Went fishing with my son today, a day wasted," end of quote. Now, the next picture is the son, Brooke Adams. That was the one that spent the wasted day. But it just so happens that Brooke also kept a diary, and he recorded on the very same day, "Went fishing with my father, the most wonderful day of my life." Yeah, too many fathers and maybe grandfathers fail to invest the time in the children. And some who do fail to grasp the difference, that perspective their kids have of that investment. Another father, an acclaimed, well-respected author of many scholarly works, said the following, quote, "I wish I had written one less book and taken my children fishing one more time." You've heard the old adage that families that pray together stay together. Well, let's change that a little bit. Families that play together stay together. It's particularly true when the play is uplifting and natural. Holidays, family vacations, birthday celebrations, other activities. You know what those do? They build bonds. They build strong bonds and feelings of self-worth, and they build heritage. And that phrase, remember when we, and then you just rejoice and relish the memories that you have, and that your kids have, and that your grandkids have. So I submit to you that grandparents can do much in this area of having fun with their grandkids. Generally, grandparents have more time and more money to invest in the grandchildren. And this is helpful. It's useful in helping to build a strong sense of family heritage with these grandchildren. Over my years in the ministry, I've observed countless Christian families in various stages of their spiritual journey, from mature believers to those who had little biblical understanding, from those that had high standards to those that had low standards or maybe no standards, from those that held to conservative music and dress to those that were discordant in those areas, from those that had rigid rules and those that had no rule, from those that had a lot of freedom and those that had stringent boundaries and everything in between. And I've witnessed that children from staunch conservative families, I've watched some of those kids wander away. And when they wander away, I wonder, was their family fun? Was their family fun? And maybe it was. Maybe some of those that wander away from the faith, maybe they wander away because the sin nature just has its way. And mom and dad did what they could to provide an enjoyable and a fun environment for them. I want you to meet Nick. Nick came through our youth group at Valley Forge Baptist Temple, but he didn't land with us until he was about 16 years old, 10th grade. And his senior year, as every year, we would take the very last class that we had that senior group, and the next Sunday they were graduating into the singles ministry. But that very last class we called Open Forum, and we took all the seniors, and we had this discussion with them, and we told them, you can say anything you want to say. You can level any criticism against the youth ministry that you want to level. You can tell us anything that was particularly helpful to you or what you felt was hurtful to you. You can say anything positive or anything negative, and we will take it all on board, and nothing you say will ever come back to you. Just talk freely. Give us a report card and let us know what you think. And the vast majority of the comments each year, year after year, they were positive. But this particular year, there were some things said that were not, it was what was in their heart, but it was criticisms. And I asked the group this question: what do you really want to get out of life? And the answers came back: cars and clothes, and there were gadgets and electronics was in there, and they talked about things they wanted to do, and then Nick spoke up. And Nick said, I would really like to have a family. Now, he wasn't talking about a wife and children. He was talking about a mother and a father and siblings. See, as a young boy, Nick was growing up with his drug-addicted mother and the next live-in boyfriend and the next live-in boyfriend that beat him up, until the authorities stepped in and took him out of the home. And then he just bounced around foster home for years and ended up in a boys' home. And in the boys' home, he then started coming to our teen group. And he just wanted a family. And when he said that, I just really want a family, it got dead silent in the room. You know, there's a lot of times we don't appreciate what we have. And when the class was over and everybody left, Nick stayed behind. And he said to Ray Clifford and I, he says, I don't get it. He said, I listen to the teens talk, and everything they're running toward is what I'm trying to run away from. And I'm thinking, well, you just don't appreciate what we have. and we're all guilty of that at times. He just wanted a family. Family is important, and it's in the heart of young people to want that. And you know, our kids are going to need good, strong families. They've always needed it, but we're in a culture now that is dead set against them. And boy, they need a family with strong biblical and family values to help them weather the storm in this do your own thing, run from God culture that they're living in. Family life should be fun and filled with humor and laughter. And you know, it can actually be therapeutic. The Bible does say that a merry heart doeth good like a what? Sorry, like a medicine. It also says in Ecclesiastes, there's a time to weep, and there's a time to what? Laugh. There's a time to laugh. Let's laugh. In his book, Laughter in the Walls, Bob Benson wrote the following. I pass a lot of houses on my way home, some pretty, some expensive, some inviting, but my heart always skips a beat when I turn down the road and see my house nestled against the hill. I guess I'm especially proud of the house and the way it looks because I drew up the plans myself. It started out large enough for us. I even had a study. 2 teenage boys now reside in there. And it had a guest room. My girl and 9 dolls are permanent guests. It had a small room Peg had hoped would be her sewing room. The boys swinging on the Dutch door have claimed that room as their own. So it really doesn't look right now as if I'm much of an architect. But it will get larger again. One by one, they will go away to work, to college, to service, to their own houses. And then there will be room. The guest room, a study, and a sewing room for just the 2 of us. But it won't be empty. Every corner, every room, every nick in the coffee table will be crowded with memories. Memories of picnics and parties, Christmases, bedside vigils, summers, fires, winters, going barefoot, leaving for vacation, cats, conversation, graduations, first dates, ball games, arguments, washing dishes, bicycles, dogs, boat rides, getting home from vacation, meals, rabbits, and 1,000 other things that fill the lives of those who would raise 5. And Peg and I will sit quietly by the fire and listen to the laughter in the walls. Now, I can identify with Benson's laughter in the walls, but I want to give it this slight alteration. Laughter in the carpet. Our daughter, Jamie, I envision her sitting Indian style on the floor in the family room in front of the television set, watching silly slapstick shows like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and crying tears of laughter as she watches the antics of Abbott and Costello, and falling forward laughing and slapping the carpet, and sometimes rolling on her side laughing and sitting up and wiping the tears out of her eyes like this as she's laughing and sits there and watches the next scene. The real slapstick was going on in the living room. It wasn't on the TV, but it was fun to watch. Make home a happy place. Laugh together and laugh a lot and laugh often. You know, a happy home attracts kids. Your kids, it'll even attract the neighbor's kids. You know, when we lived in Virginia, our next door neighbor had 2 girls. One was a year older than Jamie, one was a year older than Jamie, and they were at our house a lot. The 3 girls laughing and playing. Should grandparents spoil their grandkids? Yeah. Easy answer, huh? Spoiling is not solely about giving material things to your grandchildren. About the time I was born, my maternal grandparents, Hartzell and Sophronia. Grandma hated that name. They all called her Frony. And they moved from Northern Virginia to Northern Virginia from West Virginia. They came to open a frozen custard stand. So I want you to see a picture of the frozen custard stand that my grandpa built and my Uncle Dick built and my dad built. It was a business adventure, and they were wildly successful. Grandpa and Grandma Smith were. But they were married to it 7 days a week, long days and exhausting schedules. And they sold that custard stand, and they moved back to Buchanan, West Virginia after 10 or 12 years. I was so upset that they left. And the day after they drove out of town in Northern Virginia and went to West Virginia, I went to school at Burke Elementary School that next morning. And I'm sitting in the first class of the day, second grade, 7 years old, and that's about all I could take. And I got up out of my seat, and I went over to the closet on the side of the room, and I opened it up, and I got my coat out. I put my coat on, and Mrs. McCroskey, she looked up from her desk, went, "What is going on?" And I reach in, and I get my little metal lunchbox, and she says, "Sam, sit back down." I took out the room, and she comes running. And I got to the stairs, and she couldn't run down the stairs fast enough with these big high heels on. And I went down the stairs at the bottom, took a right, and darted out the front door. And as soon as I was out, I dashed into the cornfield. Once I was in the cornfield, they couldn't find me. And I went all the way across the cornfield, and I emerged a long ways from the school, but out of the cornfield and up the hill to the Silas Burke house, which is the old homestead house that the whole area, the Burke community, was named after. Knocked on the front door. I knew the lady there. No one answered. I went down the hill to Susie Fowler's house. Susie Fowler was about 18 years old. She was my Sunday school teacher in the Burke United Methodist Church, a little church at a crossroads in a farming community. And I knocked on the door, and Susie came to the door, and here's a 7-year-old boy standing there with his coat and his lunchbox. And I said, "Could you give me a ride home?" And she's looking around, and okay. So she invited me in. She had to go get out of her pajamas and get dressed. And so while I'm sitting there in the recliner, the custodian is driving all over the farm roads looking for me. And finally, the principal called my mom and said, "Sam left school today." She goes, "What do you mean he left school?" "He just got up and left, and we can't find him. The custodian's out driving around. We can't find him." She got in the car, and Mom did, and she's driving the country roads, and everybody's, I guess, to some degree panicking, and I'm just all snuggled up in a recliner in the living room waiting for Susie to get her clothes changed. And then she takes me home, and I asked her to drop me off at the bottom of the driveway. And why I did that, I don't know. And I'm walking up the driveway, and my mom comes running out of the house, and she scoops me up, and she's so relieved that I'm okay. And then she starts coaxing me, what is wrong? And I burst into tears. And I said, "I will never see them again." And she goes, Who? Who are you talking about?" "Grandpa and Grandma. They left, and I'm never going to see them again." Now, for a little 7-year-old, that's the way I processed it. I thought that was it. They would never come back, and it didn't dawn on me that we'd get in the car and drive to West Virginia one day and that we would see them. Grandparents are important to grandkids. They really are. And we just don't know how much. They did spoil us, Grandpa and Grandma. They had this frozen custard stand, and we would go up and we'd work. We'd pick up all the trash in the gravel parking lot, and then Grandpa would give us silver dollars. Man, we got a bunch of silver dollars from picking up trash, and then, of course, he always gave us custard to eat. And then once they moved back to West Virginia, and we would go visit them once a month, we drove back to Buchanan, West Virginia to visit, and we would sit there in the living room for a while talking, and we were waiting. The kids, we were just waiting for Grandma to say, "Do you all want some ice cream?" And she always did. They always had ice cream. And that was a real treat for us. And it's because of that, and remembering that Susan and I now, every time we go visit our grandchildren, we take chocolate donuts. And we tell them on the phone, "We're bringing chocolate donuts." And they look forward to getting chocolate donuts. And when they come to visit us here, we always buy chocolate donuts and have it at the house. And then I take each one of the grandkids, one by one, in turn, to Susie Joe's Donuts, and I buy them the donut of their choice. And it's ways that we can just do something that they really enjoy. One year, Susan and I bought this little Wendy's gift thing. They could get a free Frosty every week of the year. We got each one of the kids and the mom and dad these little cards so they could have Frosty after Frosty as a way of saying, we love you and we're thinking about you. Spoiling grandkids, of course, it's got to be done with the parents' approval, right? You don't want to undo something that your kids are trying to train in your grandkids. We have to really be careful there. We're not raising them. Our kids are raising them. So we want to be a help, not a hindrance. Our gift giving should be with their approval too. You know, I would never get my grandkids something that I knew their mom or their dad would disapprove of. I just wouldn't do that. If my son-in-law or my daughter was against guns, I wouldn't buy a BB gun, even though it might be age appropriate. I wouldn't do that because that's not helping. After my grandparents moved back to West Virginia, they bought this. Let's go to the next picture. Oh, they bought a path. That is the path to that. They bought a log cabin on 1,700 acres in the middle of West Virginia. Now, they didn't own all 1,700 acres. It was a cabin that was in the Middle Fork Club. They were only one of 17 cabins, and the whole club collectively owned the land. They owned from mountaintop to mountaintop and the valley in between. And Grandpa and Grandma bought that log cabin for one purpose, for the family to come and play. They wanted a place for the family to come to. And so we went every summer for weeks, and we ran in the river, we fished in the river, we went up to the pond and swam in the pond, and we went to Ash Camp. That's at the top of one of the mountains. It's the site of an Indian campground, and what we were always told, a massacre, but we'd go up to Ash Camp, and you could dig up Indian arrowheads, you dig up bear claws, you dig up teeth, a jawbone, just bits of bones. We dug up all kind of stuff at this camp that was underneath a huge rock that would hang over it. Hours and hours enjoying Ash Camp and hiking and swimming and fishing and swinging on grapevines and exploring and snipe hunting. Anybody been snipe hunting? Yeah, we did a lot of snipe hunting with unsuspecting people, and we would play until it was dark, and Grandpa and Grandma or Mom and Dad would go out and ring the bell to get us to come in back close to the cabin, and then we'd play hide and seek and kick the cans. And then when the weather turned cool, we'd play rook at night by the fire in the living room. I tell you, we have a lot of childhood memories at camp. They were really good at building memories for us. Susan and I can't afford something like that for our grandchildren, but you know, we can provide a lot of fun times for them right here in southeastern Pennsylvania. And when they came in August, I took the Excel spreadsheet that I printed out in PDF format that you got. I took that file and opened it up on the computer, and I said, we'll do this and this and this and this. And I just handpicked some of the things, and we did those when they came in August, and the kids had a lot of fun being with Grandpa and Grandma. Now, we don't have a swimming pool like some have, so we went out and bought a stock tank. Now, that's a tank that a farmer would put out in the middle of the field, and the livestock would drink out of this. So it kind of looks like a swimming pool, but it's 24 inches deep, and it's the one we got, 6 foot in diameter. And since we have a hose bib on the back side of the house that has hot and cold water, we ran warm water into the stock tank. And those kids, they played for hours in this warm water. Now, they have a swimming pool down at the Wilds at their house, but it's ice cold mountain water. Ours is nice warm water, and they enjoyed that and spent literally hours. How much time you can spend with your grandkids depends upon things such as, how many grandkids do you have? You know, we have 3. I can spend more time with 3 than the Levises can with 69 or whatever they have grandkids. How many grandkids you have, how close they live to you, whether or not you're retired, there's things that come into play as to how much time you can spend. But listen, Be creative to connect with them. You have to be creative. You have to find ways to make life special for them when they're with you. The first time I met my granddaughter, she was 3 weeks old, and I went to Milwaukee to help the family move to the wilds when my son-in-law was going on staff there. And so I brought a gift to Brooklyn. And the first time I'm holding her at the house, and I'm sitting in a chair, and I've got her in my lap, and Susan goes and gets this special gift that I bought for Brooklyn. And so I'm sitting there holding her, and I'm opening the gift, and Jamie's across the living room and watching and just enjoying seeing her dad hold her daughter, her first child, right? Her first child. So I'm opening it, and I'm saying, Brooklyn, Mommy can read this to you, and you can look at the pictures. And so Jamie's thinking it's a book. And then I said, and sometimes you can watch something on it. And Jamie, she says, what do you have? And I took the wrapper off, and I gave her an iPad. Now, she was 3 weeks old, and I gave her her first iPad. And I told her it was hers, but she could share it with her mommy if she wanted to. And I said, we can FaceTime each other. Now, folks, at that time, I didn't realize the investment that was in establishing a relationship with my grandchildren. And from that time until, well, when they could interact a little bit, until they went to school, we had breakfast with our grandkids 5 days a week. We'd sit at the breakfast table, they'd sit at the breakfast table, we would FaceTime, and for 5 years we did that, and then school started, and that interferes some with the schedule, being able to do it. We can't do it quite as much now. So here's how we learned how impacting that was. The wilds of New England, which happens to be in New Hampshire, they lost their camp nurse, and they needed our daughter, Jamie, to come to New England for 2 weeks in the summer, and other nurses were going to come and rotate. But the wilds of North Carolina needed our son-in-law to stay in North Carolina. So for 2 weeks, Jamie came up, and she dropped the grandkids off with us and then went up to New Hampshire. And 2 of the 3 were still in diapers, so they were all 3 very young. They'd never been away from Mom and Dad before. And so we all wondered, how are they going to handle this? And you know what? They never missed a step. They never asked about Mom or Dad. They never cried about missing Mom or Dad or not being at home. They were so comfortable with us because they've been eating breakfast with us 5 days a week for so long. They were just, that's when we realized how much they felt connected to us to be able to do that without it being an issue. Now, we have it tough. My grandkids are growing up at the wilds, and if you've ever been there, it is a fantastic place with zip lines and rock climbing and miniature golf and rope course and sand court volleyball and tubing and giant slide, and it goes on, and swimming and the blob and campfires, and it goes, and we got to compete with that. So they come to see us, and we got to work to provide something that they really enjoy. So we try to think of things that they don't do when they're at the wilds. And one of the things we decided we're going to do when they came this August was we're going to cut a tree down. They haven't cut a tree down before. Now, do you think that would interest kids, cut a tree down? And I tried to make it real exciting. Told them what was going to happen and said, and we're going to put a rope way up in the tree, and you're going to get on the rope, and you're going to pull the tree, and you're going to pull it the direction we want it to fall. And so when Susan and Jamie and the grandkids were coming up from the wilds, they stopped at Cracker Barrel, and they were telling the waitress, we're going to Pop-Pop's, and we're going to cut a tree down, and we're going to pull a rope. And it was important to them. My encouragement to you is to find a way to connect with your grandkids and be purposeful about it, and you have to be creative to connect. Giving gifts for no special reason, recognizing special days, starting of school, graduation, school plays. You know what the vast majority of grandkids surveyed say about their grandparents? I wish they lived closer. 90% say that. And 10% already live in town with the grandparents. It's important to grandkids to have grandparents in their life. Treat the grandchildren as individuals. They're unique. Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it." So know them and tailor your activities to them, and take the grandchild, do something with them that is unique to them. I'll tell you, in this culture that tries to confuse them on gender issues, we are very careful to emphasize you're a boy, you're a girl. And so I take my grandsons and we go to the man store. You know what the man store is? It's Home Depot. We go to the man store, and they tell their mother, "Pop-Pop's taking us to the man store." And so we go, and even if it's just picking up something little, and then Susan takes Brooklyn and goes and gets a pedicure, does something girly. Now, this is a picture. I skipped past this. Here's when technology's working for you. My grandkids would call us, FaceTime us on the iPad. Let's back up one. Back up another. That is Brooklyn and me watching Anastasia on the television in our family room. I sit in the front of the TV with the iPad, and you can see down in the corner, we're watching Anastasia. So she is sitting at the counter in her house in North Carolina. I'm sitting in my family room, and we're watching Anastasia together. And we're talking about the cartoon, and we're laughing at it, and we're interacting. Technology works for you like that. Deuteronomy 4:9 says, "Only take heed to yourself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest thou depart from thy heart all the days of thy life. But teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons," which is thy grandsons. It was important to God that adults would teach their children the things that they had seen God do. So he told the Israelites, what you saw in Egypt, the crossing of the Red Sea and Mount Sinai and the provisions in the wilderness and the crossing of the Jordan River, make sure you tell your sons what you have seen God do. And make sure you tell your grandsons what you have seen God do. So let's talk to them about God. Tell your grandkids what God has done in your life. Convey your spiritual values to them. Do as much as their parents will allow you to do if their parents are unsaved. Now you have to be careful. But do what they will allow you to do, and respect the parents, and love those kids unconditionally, and be an asset to them and do for them. And maybe God will let that soften the unsaved parents' hearts to let you have more inroad into the lives of your grandchildren if their parents are not saved. Don't do things like this. Don't preach to your kids, the parents. Don't preach to your grandkids. Don't put down the parents to the grandchildren. Your mother shouldn't let you, your mother should. Don't criticize the church they attend, or if they don't go to church at all, don't criticize that. Don't make your love dependent upon their spiritual development. Don't discuss church problems with either parents or their kids, your grandkids. But do things like this. Love the parents and the kids unconditionally. Live sincerely and consistently in front of them, and joyfully. Just let it be your life. Just let the overflow of your walk with Christ be seen by them, and use holidays to enforce spiritual truth. Well, there's a whole bunch of do's, but let me mention this. Don't grow old and cranky. Grow old and kind. Grow old and pleasant. Your grandkids will not want a cranky grandfather and a cranky grandmother. Tell them funny stories. Next picture. This, I think I got out of line here. This is Susan took Brooklyn to get a pedicure. Spoiler a little bit. Doing a girly thing. And then she wanted to have a tea party with her and wanted to teach her how a tea party is done. And so Susan got out her teacups and her tea kettle and she's teaching, let's back up one, and she's teaching what to do with it. And Oliver, there in between, he's holding the little, whatever you call that thing. It's got the cubed sugar in it. It's the sugar bowl. And you can't see it here, but he's got a towel wrapped over his arm. So he's standing with the towel wrapped over, and he's got that. And Brooklyn takes the little pinchers, and she gets a cube of sugar and puts it in the teacup, and Susan's instructing them. And then the next picture, then they're drinking their tea together, and Susan was telling her to take your little finger and put up, and just, they're having a little tea party, and they're having fun doing it. It's easy to do. Next picture. And we gathered for my mom's 90th birthday because we want to pass heritage along, and it's in the picture. It's my siblings and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren are in the picture. And we all gathered in Northern Virginia. And the next picture, my mom is the one in the gray hair there. We put some lights on her. We recorded it, and she's given her salvation story. So the grandkids and the great-grandkids and others to come after that would know what happened when God moved in to our family. Chronicle your life for your grandchildren and for their children so they know you. And more importantly, they know what God did in you and for you. Now, probably most of you would say, I'm just not a writer. You don't have to be a professional writer. Just put it in your words. Just tell your story. I would suggest that you journal. Because if you don't write it down, who's going to tell them when you're gone? How will they know? Write it down so they have something that they can own and have. Tell them what the good old days were like. They'll find it interesting. Now, I don't know what gas is going to cost when they start buying gasoline, but it'll blow them away when I tell them that the cheapest I ever bought gasoline was 23.9 cents a gallon from the Hess gas station in Fairfax City. And it took me $1 to fill up my Volkswagen Beetle, and I could drive a whole week on $1. And I could go to McDonald's. I could buy a quarterback. And what McDonald's did is they sold you a hamburger and French fries and a shake, and if you give them a $1 bill, they would give you a quarterback. So they called it the quarterback. Can you buy food like that today for 75 cents? They will be intrigued by it. I can write about farm life in Virginia and growing up on a gravel top road. You can tell them about going to elementary school and what it was like. You can make it interesting for them. When we went to my mom's 90th birthday party, we got up that morning and we had to drive about 25 minutes to get to where the party was, and we drove right by Burke Elementary School. So we drove in the front parking lot and we got out, and I took my grandkids and stood at the front door of Burke Elementary School, and I pointed to some windows and I said, "You see those windows right there? That was my second grade classroom, and let me tell you what happened." And I'd tell them about running away and running out the door and running into the cornfield. And I took them with me, and we went over to where the cornfield was. And then we got in the van and went to where the Silas Burke house was and Susie Fowler lived. And I told them the story, and they listened, and they were interested in that. I got to give them the right moral to the story. You don't run away from school, but you can tell them things that you did. It will captivate them. All right, I got to close with this.